Savage Errands, the 6th Kuinkazner. Introduction. The unsacred age is over. The strongest and most ancient of the races, the invincible Vin Veneer, have received their long-awaited emperor. Unpinning their ring kingdom from the world, they sailed their great northern continent back into the strange waters of the Sea of Pleats. Left behind as custodians of their legend is the small island republic of Arbonhale. Founded by a saint, it has prospered for over 7 centuries as a beacon of justice, gentle rule, economic benevolence, exploration, high education, scientific curiosity, and deep moral investigation. Spreading out from this song-raised island, spanning the Southern Sea, is a loose maritime federation of age-old cities, ports, island states, duchies, and trading nations called the Sabler Commonwealth. Now a legitimate power, the Sabler Commonwealth has begun challenging the cruel realms surrounding it. Desiring all men in all places to be free, the Sablers have used strategy and economic sanctions to abolish piracy at sea, end slavery on land, and topple tyrants wherever they find them. To these ends, a great standing army, supported by an equally formidable fleet, has been created, the Sabler Order. As to the covenants, obligations, and secrets of the departed Vin Veneer, the Sablers have crowned their first king, now 20 years into his rule. Discovering a 6,000-year-old covenant, one ratified by the Vin Veneer House of Pale Dragon, the Sablers have entered the western kingdom of Sanzakarth to adjudicate the crowning of a queen. However, a warlord by the name of Kuinkazner opposes the intervention, and is marching toward the Sabler forces stationed at the old seaside fortress of Anzioch to destroy them. This is the setting for Savage Errands. Part 1. The Pale Dragon Amendment. In the 19th, 20th, or 21st year of King Donohue's reign, depending on which calendar one used, an estrangement in the Western fortunes, now 10 years old, had escalated to civil war. A warlord had risen to power by the name of Kuinkazner, and it was to that cold and pitiless name that many strange rumors had come to be nailed. The fast-moving and well-financed Kuinkazner had humbled many of the ancient cities and shrines of northern Sanzakarth. Desert kingdoms seemed to breed tyrants, one kind of desolation begetting another, and this Kuinkazner was as cruel as any other. He made an open show of those who denied his ancient claims, burning whole towns, crucifying entire families, seizing whatever assets pleased him, executing peaceful priests, burying scholars alive, throwing disabled children into pits of starving hyenas, desecrating temples erected to those better spirits who refused to hear his bloody vows, and enslaving tens of thousands for their unwilling part in his coming kingship. Withstanding him, sequestered in the ancient fortress of Anzioch, was a young girl by the name of Saleawan. However, the current queen of Anzioch, 22nd of her line, the scheming Gwen Siratu, ignored the claims of Saleawan, intending instead to promote her own daughter, Sin Shardane, and come to treaty with Kuinkazner by marriage. And so, Anzioch was a city with 2 queens, one backed by the lawful Sabler order and another by murder, malice, and intrigue. Invoking a forgotten covenant, the Sablers captured Anzioch with only 5,000 men and held it under the authority of an old but celebrated Vambrasian name, Pale Dragon. The Sabler commander, the prestigious General Sax Alan Girolamo, a man who had walked the world for 85 years and killed for 70 of them, held the city in obedience to King Donohue's primary wish, that Sanzakarth must not fall back into heathenry. The very image of that heathenry was Kuinkazner, commanding a 200,000-man army, whose hateful gaze now lay fixed on Anzioch, the great seaside fortress that guarded the southern Sea of Hooks. Fortunately for the Sablers, their best allies included the legendary Blackthorns of the Eastern Fortunes and the House of Yale, which had recently immigrated from the distant skies of Royos. The breadth of the Sabler Commonwealth, with its fair practices, devotion to law, free markets, and broad moral and economic benevolence, was too philosophically precious and commercially prosperous to risk the advance of a rapacious desert-dwelling despot. Investing themselves into the matter, the Blackthorns and the Yales came to Anzioch offering aid, insight, money, and, as the Sablers had hoped, the use of their many strange artifacts. Tristanué Yale was one such ally. She was living on Arbonhale at the time, a small islet off the eastern side of Arbonhale, the island capital of the Sabler Commonwealth. It was purchased 20 years prior when 2 of her aunts, Alessia and Devon, barely older than her, were gallivanting around the Southern Rhone. It was open to anyone from the houses of Blackthorn or Yale, or any of their many political allies and personal friends. As for Tristanué, she loved to travel. Whether it was to the far eastern fortunes to see her relatives, those benevolent rulers of Nymeria, the Blackthorns, or west to Sansabay to visit her cousins there, she loved the breadth and diversity of the civilized world. Nonetheless, whenever Tristanué went home, she went to Arbonhale. After having spent almost 5 months in Anzioch, in no small way irritating General Saxe Alan Girolamo with her many daring but unsanctioned midnight raids against Kuinkazner's flanks, and less defended fortifications, which included the old religious capital of Anzioch, she was delighted to be over 130 leagues away from even one grain of sand, and the general scowls. In those weeks, she and her younger sisters Tristana and Tristal returned to their favorite pastime, pearl diving nude into the warm clear blue waters around Arbonhale. When the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare and Strange Auspices learned Tristanué planned to return to Anzioch, their senior officer, Lord Howell, proposed a co-venture. That is, allowing a small number of Sabler explorers and spies to travel with her. Howell would have made this petition to Tristanué's successful cousin Orland, but she could not be found. Or her other cousin, the devout, rational, and beaming Cassandria, but a proposal of marriage, from a king no less, had seized her political and romantic sails like a gale-force crosswind. Even Howell, whose fiercest detractors knew he possessed an utterly fearless soul and a mind for diabolically clever subterfuge, dared not come between a young girl and her royal vows. Still, he tried. Cassandria's response, always in her pretty cursive, contained one name: Tristanué. So Howell played the one hand Cassandria offered him, unaware whether he should raise or fold, whether he was playing an ace or a jack. Tristanué had distinguished herself alongside Cassandria and Prince Ezrabeth Pale Dragon, but she was the wild card, the one most likely to color outside the lines a little too boldly. Cassandria obeyed scripture and Ezrabeth her amendments, but there was no such inspired writing that curbed the impulses of Tristanué, Azora, Yale. As for the officers Howell requested, they were less soldiers than scientists and could offer little assistance to their Sabler brothers in Anzioch. However, Kimjudia was of deep interest to the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare and Strange Auspices. Just east of Sanzakarth, Kimjudia was situated across the Axle of Meor, or the transom as the Sablers called it, a colossal arch of rock stretching over the entrance to the Sea of Hooks for 33 leagues. Others called it the Devil's Backbone. Though presented professionally and dispassionately, Tristanué nevertheless politely declined Howell's proposal. Standing flat-footed in the young woman's rejection, the powerful Lord Howell, First Minister of the clandestine Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare and Strange Auspices, fell to scheming, again. During her previous months at Anzioch, Tristanué somehow became the bearer of title and deed to an old mountain fortress in Kimjudia called the Tarn of Widows. The legalities of this acquisition remained dubious, but owing to the great successes Tristanué and her family had won for the Sablers at Anzioch, Howell decided not to look too closely into this curious land grab. Fortunately, Howell was presented with another law. The Ministry of Remote Ages had delivered a fragment of a northern prophecy flagged for relevance by a rather insightful scribe. As for the prophecy itself, it belonged to a Bezalite oracle named Adarike, now 10 centuries old. All good politicians recognize that few things coax the anxious soul like a well-timed prophecy. So Howell decided if he could not win Tristanué over on the merits of a co-venture, or blackmail her over forged documents, he would play to her vanity, a foible all too common among the young and beautiful. Adarike's prophecy, in part, read: "A dangerous one comes. Beautiful like smooth cedar in winter, leafless. Lordless. She is coveted by men. Women desire her. Wing and stone. She battles from above. She is wrapped in the sky. A crown of sky. Eyes of sky. She judges from a hard terrace. Under her, the night has grown wings. Voncubrea rises." Despite being warned that prophecies were little more than riddles dipped in molasses, sticky to the touch, and impossible to unknot, Tristanué nonetheless believed those old words forspoke her, or at least her growing popularity, though she preferred the word fame. In other words, she took the bait. And though vanity is never a virtue, her swagger was not entirely unfounded. The Loring King's granddaughter considered herself heir to his assets and legend. Like all the Yales who were graced and glamorized by her grandfather's most extraordinary power, the mysterious Loring Hex, she believed herself a deadly contestant in any match. Like her father, her complexion was lighter than carob but darker than caramel, a hue the Sablers cited as cedar, though they sometimes spelled it Sadar. This hue was Semokan in the Old Sarkin language and Jar May in the Kimjudian tongue. All this proving something as simple as color can elude consensus. And being Kytherian, her figure was entirely glabrous like the rest of her family, or leafless, as the Sarkins put it, possessing no hair even down to her most intimate seam. And without a lord, she reasoned, one would be lordless, unmarried, which she was. Being coveted by men and desired by women only meant she had impressed both sexes with equal effect, a feat she considered something of a triumph. Regarding wing and stone, She believed those words spoke of her great raptor and her peer of ventures. Wrapped in the sky. A crown of sky. Eyes of sky. Surely that was the light azure ecclesiarch armor she had recently acquired, along with her azure hair and eyes. Unlike the rest of the children and grandchildren of River Yale, who were born with white, ivory, or cream-colored hair with bright amber eyes, Tristanué's hair shined blue like a proud summer sky, as did her eyes. The blue complemented her skin with a paralyzing effect. The hard terrace must, she believed, refer to the peer of ventures. The last line, under her, the night has grown wings, could only mean her giant falcon, Mr. Midnight, who, as his name implied, was black as night with a beak lacquered in brass. Regarding Voncubrea, neither the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare and Strange Auspices, nor the Ministry of Remote Ages could make sense of the name other than to lean on some incomplete and questionable southern scrolls that claimed it belonged to a vanished goddess queen of Kimjudia. Captivated by all those words, simultaneously old and near, prevision that straddled the ages, Tristanué agreed to Howell's band of merry experts. They were, in order, Sir Andaclay, a titled mechanical engineer and naturalist from the Ministry of Distinctive Differences. His brother Andeshaw was an accomplished astronomer in the Republic of Brune. Elshender of Teal, a historian and archaeologist from the Ministry of Remote Ages. Cyro Lucis of Aulon, an older aristocratic arbiter from the weird Ministry of Undeviated Souls. Valeroy and Hax, two armed escorts, or shore men from the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare and Strange Auspices. Tristanué guessed they were assassins. Further distinguishing her trip were two kings and a prophetess named Lady Skythorn, a young saint who overthrew nations with carols and moved mountains into the sea with songs. The darling of the Sabler order, she had personally taken up the obligation of destroying the warlocks of Elm, demon-taming sorcerers supporting Kuinkazner's conquests in Sanzakarth with terrifying sorcery. Accompanying her was the handsome young King Lancidar II, ally to a distant Sarkin king who sought to repay Lady Skythorn for the beneficence of her late mother. The second king was the enigmatic and imposing Wingard, an itinerant beast-taming royal, towering and wild in look, who had taken an unconfessed interest in Tristanué. In addition to all these exalted souls, two others came along, her black-haired, blue-eyed bodyguard Jocasta Valan, and a pubescent Sanzakarth native named Sarando, formerly Jokessa, who served as Tristanué's page. This ends part 1 of the 6th Kuinkazner. Please like, share, and subscribe. This has been a World of El-Suwan recording. This excerpt from the 6th Kuinkazner was created using AI-assisted speech generation. Some inflections and pronunciations are not exact to the original text. Thank you for listening to the World of El-Suwan. Copyright 2023. World of El-Suwan. All rights reserved.